The National Energy Regulator has put off deciding on Eskom's tariffs for 23 and 24 and 24 and 25 after Nersa's subcommittee requested more time to finalise its recommendation. The deadline is Christmas Eve, as stipulated by a High Court order that was made earlier this year. Eskom's fifth multi-year price determination revenue application, if fully approved, would translate into a 32% hike in its standard tariff, and that would be followed by a 9.7% increase in 2024 and 2025. To talk about this, I'm joined by Energy Analyst Roger Lilley. Roger, I'm sure you want to weigh in on developments at Eskom. We'll do that in just a moment. Let's kick off, though, with this Nersa issue. Is Nersa going to be able to meet the deadline?
Well, it seems that they're not going to be able to meet the deadline. I understand that their offices closed today for their summer break.
I mean, I'm just pausing, to kind of take that in. So the deadline is there, but let's go back to the bigger issue around what happens to consumers. I mean, we've seen in years past, the way consumers have responded to some of the first time we encountered double-digit increases. How does this one get sold to consumers?
I have no idea. To increase tariffs by over 30%. At a time when South Africa's economy is really struggling following the 2 years of lockdown and so on from the COVID-19 pandemic, and with load shedding, which is decimating the economy in many regards, it boggles the mind that we could possibly expect to pay that much more for electricity in the coming year.
And of course, it has, it has bigger impacts on the cost of living. I got a note from someone that I know very well, a little bit earlier today. 4 bags of groceries costing, north of 2,000 Rand. There wasn't very much in the basket. But we have to see this in terms of the broader impact to consumers and what they are able, to spend. What is some of the research telling you about the broader impacts of asking for increases such as this one?
Well, look, for years now, Eskom has been given higher than inflation tariff increases. And if you have a look at the Eskom figures, you will find that they keep selling less and less electricity. And that's part of the reason why they have to ask for more and more money, because their sales go down. But because of the increased tariff, revenue seems to increase, but it wouldn't increase by the same amount. So, as I said, what's happening is that people are looking for alternatives. And so people are cooking with gas or other technologies. People are going offline. People are concentrating more on energy efficiency. And really, this is a crazy situation. If we want the South African economy to grow, we have to have reliable, affordable electricity supply, and we don't have it. We're expected to pay more in the midst of load shedding. It's a bit of an insult, isn't it?
I'm sure you'll have a lot of people who agree with that perspective. What's the backstory here in terms of the financial responsibilities that Eskom faces, and what it would mean if they don't get this increase that they do want?
Okay, so the situation from Eskom's perspective is that Eskom has requested that tariffs be more cost-related. In other words, just as you would do in any other business, you organize your selling price according to what it costs to manufacture the goods that you're selling. Up until now, what's happened is that Eskom has always been able to provide electricity at low cost because it had low expenses. Coal has been cheap, labor has been relatively cheap. But in more recent years, that has all changed. And especially since the last, 8 to 10 years, maybe not quite so long, Eskom's personnel has become inflated. They have too many people. And when I say that, I'm not saying that there are people who don't have jobs. What I'm saying is that Eskom, when compared to a power utility of similar size anywhere else in the world, has many, many more employees than its peers would have. And that's simply because of the structure of the organisation. That could be restructured and changed. And we've heard lots of talk about restructuring, but we haven't really seen much happening in this regard. Partly because laying off staff or restructuring is a very unpopular decision, especially in a country where unemployment is already so high. But given that unemployment is high, and businesses that are now going to have to pay so much more for electricity as an input cost to their manufacturing or services, surely is going to have an effect on their ability to employ people, because they're only able to sell the product at a market-related price. And so as their costs go up, but they can't increase their selling price by the same factor, they're going to have lower margins, and lower margins mean they've got to cut costs, and the easiest cost to cut is personnel.
Well, speaking of personnel, there's been in a way, quite a shock change at the top, at the helm of Eskom, with the resignation of Director. You heard in our opening story, the board has now accepted that resignation and asked for grace for him to stay until about March, I think it is. How are these changes at Eskom affected going forward in this context?
Well, we firstly must notice that this resignation doesn't stand alone. Just 1 month ago, or less than a month ago, the head of the generation division, Mr. Matabula, resigned and left the organization. Then Jan Oberholzer, the chief operating officer, has said that he's leaving at the end of March. Now Director is leaving at the end of March. And there are rumors running around that the chief financial officer, Mr. Khalib Kasim, is going to resign also. That means that you have this big, complicated organization completely leaderless in the very near future.
And, it comes in the context of where, Eskom had been without a full board, for about 13 years, I think it was. We have a new board in place now, but an executive that might need, that definitely is going to need those vacancies filled up. Who might be the right team and the dream team, in a sense, Roger, you know the space well, to really take the reins at Eskom and turn it around? It's
not a job that most people will want to take on, primarily because the situation at Eskom is so dire in terms of aging equipment which has not been maintained properly, lack of suitably skilled personnel, some personnel who are disgruntled, talk about internal sabotage and internal theft and so on going on. Who would want to take on a task that big? It's very difficult. In fact, possibly the best thing to do right now is to accelerate the restructuring of Eskom into the three separate companies: generation, distribution and transmission, and find three CEOs, one to run over each. So you have a new generation head, a new transmission head, a new distribution head, and maybe that'll be easier. But whoever takes that role has obviously witnessed what pressures Andre de Ruyter was under, and has seen how he was vilified by the Minister of Energy without any kind of comeback or support from the rest of the government officials. So he was left to take that flak on his own. I'm not sure that there's a queue of people waiting for the job. Thanks very much.
Yeah, certainly going to have cast iron guts, as they would say, colloquially speaking, to be able to sit in that seat and run with things. And the idea you share about maybe dividing and conquering the elephant that is Eskom might be the way to go in this emergency scenario. Roger, thanks for your time and analysis. We appreciate it. Roger Lilley is an energy analyst.